here with a coronavirus update, primarily with the United States, but I'll get into a little bit of statistics with the global here, just global trends. I want to really point out Sweden today, and then we'll also talk about the vaccine. So this is as of yesterday. So we had 270,000 cases, new cases worldwide. United States with 55,000. 2 weeks ago, we had about 70,000 positive cases per day. So we're trending down, the right direction, the correct direction. But as far as today's data, we obviously don't have today's data yet. Going into overnight, we'll get it into tomorrow. So United States, again, Brazil, we're approaching the 5 million mark. Brazil, just shy of 3 million. India's making its way up. So obviously us, Brazil and India are the ones that really have problems right now as far as the infection rate. If we want to look at total cases per million population, we're ranking 9th. So we are getting infected at a high rate, but we're also getting infected at a high rate per million. So we looking at tests, we're obviously testing a significant amount, about 200, so 2 in 10 people have gotten a test in the United States. So our test rate is, in fact, good. The only issue is what is our death rate doing in these hotspots? So what is Florida looking at? What's Texas looking at? What's Arizona looking at? What are those death rates doing? Are they going up? Are they staying flat? And what's the death rate per million? Is it above average? Is it below average? What is it doing? So those are the ones that I really want to hit on. This is the first video I've done, but really I want to highlight the total cases and the total deaths per million. We're at 488. We're obviously a hotspot. We're a hotspot in the world. That's where, over the next 5, 10, 15 years, we'll see how this pans out as far as our total death rate per million versus other countries, and how economically we're down right now economically. Other countries are down economically. The whole entire world is at a recession, borderline depression right now. It's a global depression as far as consumption goes. And it's more, you're shifting a consumer from a physical presence to an online presence. But we'll see in 10, 15 years how that goes. Going to the death rates, we'll just go down here. So obviously we're leading total. Then we'll go to the death rates per million. We're at 488. 488 is definitely higher than the total per million of the world. But if you look at some of the most infected countries as of today, like Chile, you go to Spain, UK has been in the headlines, Italy. You go to Italy, we're under Italy. UK is actually doing very, very poorly with this disease. I know we had seen some things in the past, especially on the mainstream media, about UK, but recently we haven't heard much about UK. They are not doing well. One country that is always been on the radar is Sweden. So what's Sweden been doing? They've tried to implement herd immunity. What have they been doing? They're at 81,000 total positive tests, which would actually only be 8,000 per million. So they're half what we are, but they're getting 66 new positive cases. Not sure exactly what the population is, but I know it's a low percent of their population in comparison to even the United States. At 8,000 confirmed positive cases per million, I would say they'd probably have more. So oddly enough, though, their death rate is only at 570 per million. So 570 per million you get in, and then look at the United States, we're at 48 per million. We had a lockdown. They had not restrictions, but they had guidance as far as what they couldn't do, but didn't have a technical lockdown. So let's go to Sweden first. I've been really curious about what Sweden's model is doing because I'm very business focused. I feel that their model is basically a pro-choice model. You can determine what you want to do. There's obviously some guidance given out. You don't want to be going into nursing homes if you're sick. You don't want to be within 6 foot of people. You should wear a mask. All those things have been what kind of they started with, but they just let the people do what they wanted to do. They didn't close anybody down. They didn't lock down. So this is the total cases per since the history. So you go to March all the way to August. So we have actually pretty good data. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then now basically 5 full months of data on what their caseload's done. Obviously, we get to about May to June, and your test kits become widely available. Something that we hadn't had in March, April. So take that in consideration. March and April tests significantly higher, positive cases are significantly higher than what they represent in these charts. However, they do have a spike in July or in June. All the way through June, they have high test positive rates. And in July, then it drops off. In August, now it's fairly flat the last 2-3 weeks. If you look at that on a logarithmic, it's actually fairly flat. So linear, obviously there's the curve, and then we're going up, and then it's flattening the curve. Logarithmic, it's up, and it's pretty flat. Linear, again, looking at deaths, flat. They've been fairly flat. This, extremely flat. So high spike up. Again, that was the, I guess that's the risk that they had to take, or thought not had to take, but that's the risk they took, was getting more people infected earlier on, and then not having the capacity potentially in the hospitals or the medicine and the treatments, and letting this thing ride out and obtaining a herd immunity approach faster than other countries. And then their deaths, that's trying to weigh down. So obviously, the actual positive cases should, again, unless all this was high risk, it should have been a lot higher. And again, this is underestimated due to, understated, I believe, due to lack of testing. But you see the daily deaths, it goes from the 80s, 100s, but some of those are outliers, go to 80s, all the way down to where they're at now. They're in the single digits. So based off of this, they might have, again, early on, allowed more people to pass away from the virus. However, it appears that their method through the last month and a half has trended the right direction. Even though cases in June were up, again, partly due to testing, their total deaths were down. So this is pretty good insight as to what to expect. I believe in some other countries that are have probably hesitant to open up the country, but then states here in the United States, I think if you see states open up, it'll be high and then gradually get low. I don't see this number being high very, very long. I would say based off of this, you'd get about a month in of high death, and then it would go down. Florida, Texas, Arizona, again, it's a long time. A month is still a long time for having a substantial amount of deaths per million population. But again, if we go back to this chart on the globe, we see that they having 81,000 only are at 570 per million. Okay, so let's take a look at the United States now. So that's something that obviously I'm constantly looking at. What are we doing? Again, we're about 5 million. This continues to go down. That's primarily due to testing. But I wanted to really look at the hotspots right now, which is California, Florida, Texas. And the total deaths, to me, total deaths per million is very important. Obviously, deaths are not good. You don't want to see deaths. Total cases is a leading indicator of the amount of deaths that would potentially occur. But the death per million population shows how deadly the disease is in comparison to other diseases, incidents like suicides, accidents, all those other causes of death, cardiovascular disease, cancer, all that. So if you look at the deaths per million population, these three leading, even over New York, have all deaths, all of them are under the median death per million. Death per million. If we go to the top, obviously we've heard a lot about New York, New Jersey. Let's take a look at the total cases per million. So we look at that. So that should give us a good, again, getting Sweden on. They only had about 8,000 per million, and now their death rate is coming down significantly. So I think a little bit has to do with testing, the lack of testing, maybe how we look at deaths. I don't want to say that we look at deaths too favorably and say, hey, if somebody died of X, but then listed as COVID. I don't know. I don't know why we're treating something the way it is, but all I can see is the numbers and what we have. So something doesn't line up there. Either they're not contracting it as a population as much as we are, or they're not testing for it like we are. So anyway, these are the from high to low, who's been infected the most per million. So you basically take that times 0.1 or divided by 10. So you get 2.7% of the whole entire population of Louisiana has been infected. Arizona 2.5, so on and so forth. So that gives you a good indication. And then based off of the FDA and some of the other guys I've heard, you take that times 10, so it would be 27%. So even though these numbers, if you would do it in the million, it would be 2.1%. People have said based off the early tests in the virus, and again, it depends on where you're at, especially New York. New York, that could be 40% of the population's already had it. But again, their number right here, 1.6, so 1,600 in comparison to Sweden. Sweden's approach of no lockdown. Something obviously has occurred in New York. I know that Cuomo's been made fun of for the way he's approached it, and then other people like the way he's approached it. I think there's definitely some problems that he had early on because he didn't know about it. I don't think he made the wrong decisions on purpose, at least I hope not. But some of those decisions that he had made cost people lives. I think that's a fact at this point in time, and I don't think it's because it was malintended. It was just due to lack of information. So again, mostly on the East Coast. And we'll see. Maybe I'm wrong, but we'll see if those death numbers in Louisiana, Michigan, Illinois, Mississippi. Michigan's very, very, very odd to me. So if you could look at the deaths per million, Michigan has above a lot of these others, but they have 9,000 cases per million. And that is well below, that is well below the median. So U.S. median is 5,000, and we've got a median again of 488. And you look here again. Maybe it's a testing issue. Maybe it's an early testing issue, and the spread started one way, and more people had it. But you look at all of this information and think, Florida's a hot spot. They have 355. Again, Sweden had in the 500s. So you're looking at maybe herd immunity would get you to 500 or 600. But these two numbers, and again, Massachusetts, big outliers. Obviously you got to figure out if that's the actual trend and what to expect. Because if that's the case, Florida's got a long way to go. But they've also got more cases per million. Or New York's had it a lot worse than we think. I believe it's kind of both. I think New York had a lot worse than we think, and they handled it poorly. And Florida has not had it as bad as what New York had, and they've handled it better. So, again, not because of politics as much, but it's because of the lack of information. Maybe a little bit of politics, but definitely a lack of information. So that's the statistics there that I'm seeing, I'm noticing, and I'm always going to be kind of aware of. Here's some of the news. My local is Iowa, so I'm constantly figured out. We've not had a lockdown at all in Iowa. I guess we can go back to our caseloads. We're at 46,000. Population's a little over 3 million. We get 600. We've got 600 yesterday, and then 12 deaths. So we're at 285. So 285 deaths per million. And again, if we look at that, 285 is below the median, and then we're right around the median for total infections per million. Really, the big topics are really about school, so I'm not going to go really into that because I'm not a doctor. I don't know the best thing to do. I think there's options to go all online or all in person, and I think it's smart to have options at this point in time because there's a lot of people that don't agree on that. Sweden, a lot of the headlines that we saw in Sweden about 2, 3, 4 weeks ago were all negative. It was all that Sweden's doing a bad job, Sweden doesn't know what they're doing. But now I've been seeing, in the news, Sweden's economy less hit by a pandemic, Sweden's second quarter. Again, these are all headlines. You gotta further go into detail. Sweden's COVID death rate lower than Spain, Italy. That is actually confirmed. So let's go here. Again, your death rate. Death rate is important. So death rates, Italy. Okay, so Italy, what did they say? Italy, Spain, UK. So Italy, Spain, UK. Yes, so that's fact. Based off of my source, which is Worldmeters Info Coronavirus. So that, again, they're doing something right even without a lockdown. It could be making sure that those people that are high risk are not infected or don't get infected, not putting them at high risk, or there's some sort of a treatment that they're doing that's better than what anybody else is doing. Again, ventilators are a big thing. Now some people are saying that's not a good thing. Again, I don't know, but we're learning more as we go. So doctors, obviously, they've got their hands full, but it's been good. Here's a fun little chart. A lot of people have probably seen this. I'll link it below. Johns Hopkins University, they have basically a detailed heat map, confirmed cases, and so deaths. So you can just kind of see where the deaths have been. So this is obviously not per capita. It's just straight how many people have died in certain areas. East Coast hit hard. West Coast is hit hard. Midwest. But it's basically these major metropolitan cities, as you would expect, higher population, obviously more death. Per capita, we look here, there's more per capita in the East Coast, definitely more per capita in Michigan. We've got some over here in the West, out West, really not in California, not as bad as they've done a really good job in a lockdown. It's been brutal on the economy, but as far as the death rate, they have not had a death rate. That's very significant. But you get into Arizona, New Mexico, and Nevada, and all that area over here. You got some hot spots in Texas. You got some hot spots down south. But Florida, as much steam as they've been getting, you don't have per capita a ton of death. And that's, again, what we kind of went through in these charts. It's confirmed by Johns Hopkins again. You get up to Seattle over here. I'm not going to get into riots and protests and all that stuff and how that, obviously people are going to be people. Just this is more factual related and where people are dying per capita, majority of. So these could be considered hotspots or just kind of an outlier because there's not a lot of people in there. But anyway, that's kind of food for thought there. One thing I found really interesting is searching on the vaccine. The vaccines they can't come soon enough. Whether you are going to take a vaccine or not, it's definitely going to ease a lot of people's minds. I think it's about time, that we start looking at, alternatives to treatments, and some people definitely want to get on board. So we have to talk about vaccine, because if you don't talk about vaccine, then there's a portion of the population, no matter what, they're not going to feel comfortable coming outside. And one of the big things I saw today, and I thought this was hilarious, I'm really, really big into physical physical fitness and maintaining your physical health, also mental health, but physical health is very important to me. And so U.S. obesity, this is just the headline, U.S. obesity epidemic could undermine effectiveness of a COVID-19 vaccine. So that's that's one from CNN Health. This is one from Daily Beast. I'll just read some here. Read at CNN. I guess this is the same, so I'll just close that. This is CNN. World crippled diseases. But in the United States, where at least 4.6 million people have been infected and nearly 150 have died, vaccine is hampered by epidemic. So, in case you don't know, obesity is an epidemic. So there's that. So scientists know that vaccines are engineered to protect the public from influenza, hepatitis B, tetanus, and rabies can be less effective in obese adults and the general population, leaving them more vulnerable to infection and illness. So this has been another thing that I've seen a couple articles here and there about the death rate. Also in, we talk about elderly, but also the obese and the overweight and the unhealthy underlying health conditions. So obesity is an epidemic. And now that they're saying that a vaccine could be hindered, the effectiveness of a vaccine could be hindered by obesity, not a great sign. So I think what this should show is people need to take care of their health before another epidemic or a pandemic comes in order for them to withstand that next epidemic or pandemic. Again, it's dominoes. If one domino falls and then another, it's just a chain reaction. You have complications throughout life. I feel like that's very common sense, but again, you gotta take care of your health. That's the bottom line. You gotta take care of your health, but you also have to mitigate. You gotta mitigate the risk. So obviously, with masks, with social distancing, with all this is all about mitigation. Mitigation, and we don't have a cure, so we have to mitigate the risk to survive or to not pass it on to somebody else. It's so in order to mitigate your own risk from dying from a disease, having less pre-existing often helps. From what I've been studying about this particular disease helps a lot. So will it still work in the obese? Prediction is no. Raj Shah, I think that's how you say his name. I know what he looks like, but I don't know how to pronounce his last name. More than 107 million American obese. So we have a population of under 400 million and 107 million adults are obese. So yeah, so that's a big number. That's just a big number. So if they're saying that this vaccine doesn't work in the obese, that's 107 million people that it won't work on. So I don't know if that's true or fake or whatever, but if that's true, this thing's not going to work on. I mean, first of all, that's a high risk, and that's 20% of our population, 25% of our population or more. So if this thing doesn't even work, if a vaccine doesn't even work, why are you even making a vaccine? If 25% of people, it will, like, especially those high risk, those are probably the most high risk. I would say probably 50% of the deaths, if not more, probably come from that and the elderly. They're already talking about how 60-70% are the elderly, and obviously your mortality rate increases when you're obese. I don't know if it's 2, 3, 4 times as much as a healthy non-obese. That healthy obese, healthy non-obese, no existing or pre-existing conditions. I don't know if obesity is a pre-existing condition. I would assume so, since it's labeled an epidemic. But again, not a doctor, don't know. So again, if they're saying 107 million are obese and it won't work on them, I guess we're kind of just screwed then. 25% are screwed. And they don't have a cure. So what are they supposed to do? If they can't get a vaccine, is their only option to get in shape? I don't know. Kind of crazy. Obesity interferes with immune response. I think that's obviously that's pretty important. So why wasn't that talked about when masks were talked about. If we want to mitigate risk, why wasn't obesity talked about in mitigation of risks? So if we have complications like an autoimmune disorder, if we have complications in our immune responses by being obese, why wouldn't we tell the public that? Why wouldn't CDC talk a lot about that stuff to begin with, and then give people 4 or 5 months to work their butts off to try to lose a lot of weight in order to, again, just being simple, I don't know if that actually worked, to mitigate their risk of dying from this. So, we talk about a cloth over your face, but that's going to help. But what also would help is getting people in the gym or getting people motivated to lose weight, eat healthy, all of that. So, yeah, it's something that I just wish people would look into. I know there's a lot of health cakes going on with quarantine, but then there's also the quarantine 15. I think people need to really have a serious look at this and say, hey, what's going on? How can we help? But anyway, so that's gonna wrap it up. I just wanted to give an update on my thoughts on everything. I'll have another video tomorrow night. But thanks for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe to this channel, as there'll be plenty more.